Welcome back. We are now discussing the progression of handwriting. Handwriting is preceded by drawing. Your very, very young learner, if you give him a crayon in the hand, will start with scribbling. It's random scribbling. And it's quite important that we do expose our learners to crayons and pens and pencils at a very young age. And I would suggest from 18 months onwards that what you can give a crayon to a child and ask them and encourage them to do some scribbling. When working in the children's homes in Johannesburg, I noticed that the caregivers there just refrain from giving any crayon or any writing material to the young ones. This is because they have to look after 20 children at a time, and they cannot run after them if those children start writing on the walls, on the furniture, everywhere. So the secret in your classroom would be to be prepared. If you're teaching the 18-month to 24-month-old babies, then cover the floor or cover the wall and then give them the crayons. Position them in front of the piece of paper that you have positioned and encourage them to scribble on the paper. It should not be just a random handing out of crayons and leaving them to run around the room and write on everything. That would be just a total mess. The next aspect that develops is a controlled scribbling, where they actually pretend that they are drawing something and they call you all the time to come and have a look, see what I've written, see what I've drawn, and they have more control over the pencil. And this would be your 2 to 3-year-old that has a controlled way of managing the crayon and making drawings. And here also, put a paper up against the wall so that they can do their scribbling. It's actually very good for the shoulder development, for them to write on a vertical surface. The next aspect of drawing that develops is lines and patterns. And here they usually move over to a retractable crayon where the line is much thinner and they can work in a planned way. For the first one, where the random scribbling was with a very young child, I suggest you use a crayon that's nice and thick, that's non-toxic, and that you could wash out of fabric if they had scribbled on it. When you get to the controlled scribbling, you could use a crayon that doesn't break, and you could even move over to fiber pens. Just make sure they wear an apron or something to protect their clothes, because the writing goes all over the place, as you know. After the lines and patterns, we find that the learners from age 3 onwards actually start drawing something that resembles an image or a picture, and they can normally name it. They will tell you that they've drawn a snake or they've drawn a house. You might not recognize it, but to them it's an attempt of putting something down on paper. Now, it's very important that we don't stifle creativity. Your learner who's doing the random scribbling shouldn't be asked to draw something. You can't expect of that child to reproduce something. That's unfair. Just leave them to scribble. They're experimenting. Same with your controlled scribbling. You don't tell them, oh, I want you to draw a face or I want you to draw a house or whatever. And even when you get to lines and patterns, it would be incorrect to ask of them to reproduce something. When you get to where they can do actual pictures, you could incorporate the theme and say to them, oh, it would be nice if you could show me what a ship looks like. How could you draw a ship? But always accept what they have drawn. And don't try and tell them how to draw a house. And please do not arrive at your lesson with a drawing that they have to copy. I feel very strongly about that it is completely wrong to expect of a child to copy your creativity. Each child has his own creativity. After they've gone through the phase where they start drawing actual pictures, you will see them experimenting, trying to write letters and numbers that they see around them. And this is also important that you then encourage them and say, oh yeah, you're starting with big writing, that's quite good. But don't try and teach them to write. As parents often make the mistake to try and learn a child to write his name. It creates huge problems back at the school because the letter formation will not be correct, the font might not be correct. So if you are a parent listening to this, please don't teach your child to write his name. Leave that to the teacher. For the teacher in grade RR, you can start with showing them how to write the first letter of their name. But more than that, not really necessary. So we've now looked at how drawing precedes writing and what you should do in the age group from 18 months to about 6 years to make sure that the learner is encouraged to use different writing materials and feel confident about putting something on paper. In the next session, we will look at a theoretical framework of how writing develops and what underpins good handwriting.